There is a particular kind of quiet that really only belongs to the American Midwest, right in that hour before the dawn.
Oh, absolutely. It's a perfect suspended quiet.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly the kind of silence you need to unearth the ghosts of obsolete media or recover the lost heroism of epic poetry.
Right. And to finally hear the quiet demands of our own conscience.
Yeah. And, it is Thursday, May 21st, in the year of our Lord 2026. And we are broadcasting to you right now from the high, uneven brick streets of Atchison, Kansas.
And if you listen closely, just beneath the hum of this transmission, you might actually hear the deep, resonant tolling of the bells.
From the Abbey Church, right?
Yeah, up at Benedictine College, echoing down the hill and just rolling out over the Missouri River Valley.
It's beautiful. And the river itself is, it's hidden this morning beneath this really heavy, slow-moving fog.
It smells like wet earth and crushed leaves, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And kind of the lingering ozone of those recent spring storms we had.
Yeah. It's a town of old Catholic masonry, steep hills and wrought iron, just waking up slowly in the cool dampness.
You can even hear the distant, heavy rumble of a freight train making its way along the riverside tracks.
That sound always seems to carry the very weight of the continent with it, I think.
Right. It really does.
Yeah.
And for those stepping out soon, it is going to be cool and cloudy in Atchison tomorrow with scattered showers and possible late thunderstorms, high near 62 degrees Fahrenheit.
So definitely keep a raincoat by the door.
Oh, for sure. And maybe a measure of patience in your pocket for the afternoon gray.
Good advice. We are sitting here with steaming mugs of coffee, just watching the sky begin to soften from black to this bruised, magnificent purple.
It's stunning. And we are so glad you pulled up a chair to sit with us.
We really are. It truly is a morning that invites a certain slowness of thought, A morning that asks you to hold the world gently before the frantic machinery of the day takes over.
Yeah, because when you watch a town like this, wake up the lights flicking on one by one in the windows of the old Victorian houses, the quiet steadfastness of the monastery on the bluff, you're reminded that civilization isn't some abstract concept.
Exactly. It's a daily, physical reality.
It's made of coffee grounds and heavy coats and, the sound of a key turning in a bakery door.
Yes. It's this massive, complex inheritance that has to be picked up anew every single morning by ordinary people.
And as you prepare to step out into that world today, to take up your own piece of that inheritance, we wanted to offer you a companion for the crossing.
Right. So this morning we are taking a deep dive into the archives of Chesterton Radio.
We've got a really fascinating stack of sources to explore that speak directly to, the heart of what it means to remember, to believe, and to endure.
And as we prepare to open those archives, it just seems right to begin where all lasting things must begin.
With the foundation.
Exactly. So we are turning to the Gospel of John, specifically chapter 17, verses 20 through 26.
And this is from the Douay-Rheims translation.
Right. Yes, the Douay-Rheims. This is the high priestly prayer.
Right before the Passion.
Right. It's the moment where Christ looks beyond the upper room, beyond the garden, beyond the cross, and he prays for a future he can already see unfolding across centuries.
It gives me chills just thinking about the context of that moment.
Me too. He says, and I'll read a bit here, "And not for them only do I pray, but for them also who through their word shall believe in me, that they all may be one, as thou, Father, in me, and I in thee.
Wow.
That they also may be one in us, that the world may believe that thou hast sent me."
It's just a staggering passage because, he is speaking directly of us.
He is. He's praying for the people sitting in the dark in Kansas and the people listening to this morning broadcast wherever they might be in the world right now.
It's staggering precisely because it defies the boundaries of time and geography and, frankly, human logic.
Right. In this passage, we are presented with the ultimate blueprint for human communion.
And I think it is so vital to contrast this ancient, profound vision of unity with the peculiar kind of isolation that defines so much of our modern existence.
Oh, absolutely. Today, we're surrounded by political machinery and bureaucratic systems,
Millions of miles of fiber optic cables.
Right, and orbital satellites that promise endless, seamless connection.
But the overwhelming psychological reality of the modern era is just this profound, echoing loneliness.
We've mistaken proximity and data exchange for communion.
Yes, exactly. But Christ, in this gospel, he doesn't pray that we'll be organized into a highly efficient political system.
No, he doesn't.
Nor does he pray that we'll all just, agree on a set of abstract propositions or sign the same social contract.
Right. He prays that we will be one with the same intimate ontological unity that exists between the Father and the Son.
Wait, before we go further into the theology of that one, you use the phrase ontological unity.
Oh, right.
For someone who is just waking up and pouring their first cup of coffee, what exactly does that mean in plain English?
That's a fair question.
Because unity is a word politicians use right before they ask you for a donation,
Yeah, yes, they do.
It usually just means conform to my agenda, or let's all agree on this one policy. So how is ontological unity different from the kind of unity we hear about on the evening news?
That is a crucial distinction, and I'm really glad you stopped me there. Ontology is simply the philosophical study of being what a thing actually is at its core.
Okay.
Political unity is a unity of agreement. It's external. It's two men shaking hands across an aisle because they have a mutual interest.
But they remain entirely separate entities.
Exactly. They remain separate entities who will just walk away from each other when that interest fades.
Right.
Ontological unity, on the other hand, is a unity of nature, of existence. Think of a piece of iron put into a blazing fire.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The iron remains iron, and the fire remains fire, but the iron begins to glow with the exact same heat and light as the fire. They share a state of being.
Oh, wow. That's a beautiful way to put it.
Christ is praying that human beings, broken and scattered as we are, will be brought into the very life and being of God.
But the modern world tells us that to be united with others in any meaningful way is to lose ourselves, right?
Right. To become a mere cog in a collective machine.
A faceless number in a demographic.
Exactly. But the communion spoken of in John 17 presents this deeply Chestertonian paradox.
Which is?
It suggests that we do not lose our true selves in this spiritual unity, but rather we find our ultimate individual purpose within it.
I've actually often thought about this paradox in terms of the very medium we're using right now.
Broadcasting.
Yeah, broadcasting. And frankly, understanding the physics of it helps explain the theology.
Oh, I like where this is going.
If you think about the landscape of modern isolation, it's very much like a dark room filled with thousands of intricate radio receivers.
Okay.
Every single receiver is turned on, but they're all tuned to slightly different fading frequencies.
The dials are just spinning, trying to catch a voice.
Right. But all they produce is this chaotic, buzzing static.
Yeah.
Everyone is transmitting their own localized noise, and no one can hear anything clearly.
So you are surrounded by noise, but you are entirely alone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the true communion described in this gospel, that divine ontological unity, it's not the destruction of the radios.
It's not melting them all down into one giant monolithic block of metal so they all look exactly the same.
No, rather, it's the introduction of a single, perfectly clear, transcendent signal.
And the physics of resonance play out beautifully there.
How so?
Well, when a radio antenna encounters an electromagnetic wave that matches its tuned frequency, the electrons in the antenna literally begin to oscillate in harmony with the wave. They move together.
Wow, yeah. So when that transcendent signal hits, it resonates in every single receiver simultaneously.
Right.
The radios don't cease to be individual receivers. They don't lose their specific location in the room, their unique wooden casing, or their specific vacuum tubes.
But because they are all finally receiving the exact same living frequency, because their electrons are oscillating in the exact same harmony, they are united.
Yes. They are brought into harmony without their individual nature being erased. In fact, it's only when the radio receives the signal it was built to receive that it truly fulfills its individual purpose.
Because without the signal, it's just a box of wires making a humming sound.
Exactly.
Which is really the perfect metaphor for the modern soul, a highly sophisticated box of wires, desperately searching the static for a signal it can recognize.
And that desperate search through the static brings us directly into the first major text from our archives this morning.
Yes, it does. Because we are about to enter a world where static, signals, and the deep loneliness of the human heart intersect in a profoundly unsettling way.
We are opening a file from Chesterton Radio's The Lost Broadcasts, specifically episode I, entitled The Signal at 1.13.
And the framing of this narrative is utterly fascinating.
It really is. It's presented as a newly discovered prestige mystery serial.
Right. It evokes the atmospheric dread of BBC's Saturday Night Theater, or the creeping scholarly horror of M.R. James.
Or even the unnerving science fiction of Nigel Neal.
Definitely. And the source material tells us that this script was found on a damaged transcription sleeve in a defunct radio equipment warehouse outside St. Joseph, Missouri, back in 1998.
And it had this stark typewritten warning on it. Do not rebroadcast.
Which is just, I mean, right away we are plunged into the romance and the implicit danger of obsolete media.
There's something inherently captivating about a forbidden recording. You know, the idea that a physical object, a brittle reel of magnetic tape, can hold a reality that the world has tried to suppress or forget.
Absolutely. And the story sets its scene with the kind of meticulous atmospheric detail that makes you want to pull your coat tighter around your shoulders.
It's January 1958 in a town called Blackwood, Kansas.
And the author describes Blackwood as a town that only pretends to sleep at night.
Right, by day it's perfectly ordinary. A brick courthouse, a feed mill, the parish bells of St. Agnes.
Just people going about the business of the post-war boom.
But at night, especially during a brutal winter storm, the snow flattens the world into a single white silence.
The telephone poles march away into the dark like black crosses.
And there, isolated above Schneider's hardware in the control room of the local station, KBRX, is our protagonist, Thomas Vale.
Thomas is an engineer. He's a man who believes every mystery has a chassis.
Right, a man who trusts in grounding wires, capacitors, and the predictable behavior of electrons.
He's keeping a vigil through the storm, alone with his coffee and his manuals.
And then, at 1:08 in the morning, the phone rings.
It's a woman named Margaret Bell.
And she tells him there is music playing on her radio, though she has it tuned to a space of static between stations.
And the music is accompanied by a voice that spoke her name.
Which is terrifying.
It is. And we have to pause here to understand how AM radio actually works, particularly at night, because the story leverages the actual physics of broadcasting to build its dread.
Oh, right, because AM signals behave differently when the sun goes down.
Exactly. During the day, AM radio waves travel mostly along the ground and fade out relatively quickly.
But at night...
At night, the ionosphere, a layer of the Earth's atmosphere, changes its composition. It begins to act like a giant invisible mirror.
So the signals bounce.
Yes. AM radio signals bounce off the ionosphere and back down to Earth, allowing them to travel hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles. This is called skywave propagation.
It's why you can sometimes pick up a baseball game in Chicago while driving through the Nevada desert at 2 in the morning.
Right. It creates a physical reality where the night air is literally full of invisible voices bouncing through the upper atmosphere.
And Thomas Vale knows this. He assumes Margaret Bell is just picking up skywave interference from some distant station overlapping with a harmonic frequency.
But the detail of the telephone calls shifts the narrative from mere atmospheric interference into deep psychological and spiritual territory.
Yeah, because Thomas receives a succession of calls from the townspeople. Mrs. Bell, whose son drowned in the Missouri River 9 years earlier, hears a voice say, "Margaret, he waited for you."
Then Mr. Laird calls. He's heard his dead wife asking why he sold her piano.
And Miss Halpern, the local school teacher, hears the voices of children reciting a lesson from the day before a horrific schoolhouse fire decades ago.
Old Ben Reese hears his father, a wheat farmer who never cared for sports, calling a 1927 baseball game.
What connects all these calls is the unbearable weight of unresolved grief.
Yes. Blackwood is a town that knows how to file sorrow away neatly, to suppress the past in the name of 1950s respectability and moving forward.
But the Phantom Station, this impossible broadcast, is bypassing the conscious defenses of the town.
And this touches on the neuroscience of auditory perception and memory.
How so?
Well, when we experience profound grief or trauma, the brain often struggles to encode the memory properly. It remains fragmented. Furthermore, when the brain is placed in an environment of sensory deprivation, like a completely silent house during a snowstorm, with only the white noise of radio static, its predictive coding mechanisms go into overdrive.
Meaning it tries to find a pattern in the noise.
Exactly. The brain is an incredibly aggressive pattern-matching machine. It abhors a vacuum. If you give it static, it will search its own suppressed archives to find a pattern to lay over that noise.
That's fascinating. So the story brilliantly blurs the line. Are these people simply hallucinating their own suppressed grief because the static is acting as an auditory Rorschach test? Or has something in the atmosphere actually found a way to weaponize their memories?
It's a brilliant tension.
I do want to push back on the nature of the medium itself, though. I am struck by how this story uses radio specifically to create its dread.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, why does radio feel ghostly in a way that television never did and never will? A haunted television is almost a cliche, it's just a flashy poltergeist.
Yeah.
But a haunted radio feels deeply, intimately terrifying.
That's a great point. I think it is about the collaboration of the senses.
Elaborate on that.
Because television provides you with a complete moving picture, the face, the set, the lighting, the blocking it. It dictates the entire reality to you. You are a passive observer of a fully illuminated room.
The television does all the imaginative work.
Right. But radio provides only a disembodied voice emerging from the static. It requires your collaboration.
It forces the listener's imagination to supply the presence in the room.
Exactly. When you sit in the dark watching the amber glow of a radio dial and a voice speaks out of the silence, it feels remarkably akin to a seance.
You've invited an invisible presence into your most intimate space, your kitchen or your bedroom.
And you don't know what the person speaking looks like, how close they are to the microphone, or what kind of room they are sitting in.
The loneliness of old broadcasting, the massive physical distance between the solitary speaker at the microphone and the solitary listener in the dark, creates a kind of fragile, ghostly intimacy.
Yes. And it is profoundly unsettling when that intimacy goes awry. It's why, historically, people genuinely believed early radio technology could contact the dead.
Oh, that is a brilliant historical connection.
Thomas Edison himself famously worked on what was called a spirit phone or ghost box late in his life.
Really? Edison?
Yes. Edison didn't necessarily believe in ghosts in the Victorian Gothic sense, but he believed in the conservation of energy.
Okay, meaning energy can't be destroyed.
Right. He theorized that human personality was made up of tiny life units, essentially physical electrical charges, and since energy cannot be created or destroyed, he believed those life units dispersed into the atmosphere upon death.
So he thought he could record them.
He thought if he could build a valve sensitive enough, he could record the electromagnetic resonance of the deceased.
Wow. And the Lost Broadcasts is tapping into that exact foundational mythology of radio.
The idea that the air around us is saturated with the electrical echoes of everyone who has ever lived, waiting for a receiver sensitive enough to catch them.
And the lore within the story deepens this sense of an old, buried haunting. The next morning, Thomas begins to investigate, attempting to apply his engineer's logic to the impossible.
He speaks with Father Gabriel Mercer, who casually but heavily drops the call letters of a forgotten college station, WBLK.
Which leads Thomas to the public library. And it's a former bank, with what the author wonderfully describes as the moral architecture of money.
I love that phrase. All heavy marble and iron grills.
Right. And there he meets Eleanor Wren. Eleanor is a character of immense quiet strength, a woman who keeps the records of a town that prefers to forget.
Together, they unearthed the 1931 Blackwood College wireless extension proposal.
The official story is that it was an educational initiative that failed when a radio shed burned down in a winter storm.
But the official story is full of holes. Documents have been deliberately removed.
The shed was located miles outside of town, past the wheat fields, for no logical engineering reason.
And most chillingly, the two men who died that night, Brother Anselm Pike and Dr. Martin Rusk, are listed in the parish burial records as having died not of burns, but of exposure.
They froze to death in the middle of a fire.
It suggests that whatever they were building out there, whatever highly sensitive receiver they were attempting to construct, opened a door to a profound and unnatural cold.
And all of this careful historical investigation leads back to the inescapable personal climax of the episode.
Thomas, despite the warnings of his nervous station manager, stays late again the next night.
He sets up a reel-to-reel magnetic tape recorder, determined to capture the phantom signal and prove its earthly origin.
And we must understand how a tape recorder works to grasp the horror here. It doesn't hear sound the way an ear does.
Right. It takes the electromagnetic fluctuations from the radio output and aligns microscopic magnetic particles on a strip of rust-coated plastic.
It records raw physics.
So at 1.12, the signal returns. The music plays. The announcer speaks, identifying the station. You are listening to WBLK. This is the station beyond the wheat fields.
Thomas is terrified but holding his ground until he hears a boy laughing on the broadcast. A boy who says his name, Tommy.
Thomas shuts the radio off in a panic, but the tape recorder keeps turning.
When he rewinds and plays the tape back, he hears only static.
The music is gone. The announcer is gone. The tape recorder, objective and unfeeling, captured none of the atmospheric interference.
But right at the end, beneath the hiss of the tape, that boy's voice speaks one terrible, intimate sentence.
Thomas, why did you leave him there?
It is the absolute collapse of the engineer's worldview.
The broadcast is not an atmospheric anomaly. It is a judgment.
It is his own suppressed grief and guilt, weaponized and transmitted back to him through the dark.
It is a masterful climax because it reinforces the core theme, that the things we bury do not cease to exist. They merely wait in the static.
They wait for the right conditions to re-emerge.
The town of Blackwood tried to build a modern, respectable present over a foundation of unresolved tragedy, and the past found a frequency on which to demand an accounting.
It leaves us with a lingering philosophical chill about the nature of memory and the physical spaces, the old radio sheds, the archived records, the lonely fields that seem to hold on to the echoes of human suffering.
It truly is a brilliant piece of fiction that uses the romance of obsolete technology to explore the oldest human problem.
The inescapability of conscience.
Exactly. And that idea that history is not merely a dry record in a library, but a living, demanding presence is the perfect conceptual bridge into our next segment.
Yes, we move from the localized, haunting history of a single Kansas town to a sweeping national history explored in a truly grand format.
We are looking now at a piece of modern epic verse, the Ballad of the Bright Republic.
And the author's preface immediately contextualizes the work as being consciously inspired by G.K. Chesterton's monumental poem, The Ballad of the White Horse.
But where Chesterton wrote of King Alfred defending a nascent Christian England against the invading Danes, this poet turns their gaze to the United States.
And the premise laid out in the preface is breathtaking.
It really is. The author posits that America is a profound paradox. It's the only modern nation that, as they put it, began as a monastery and mistook itself for a market.
It was founded by rebels who believed deeply in law and order, by revolutionaries who bowed to a creator.
It's a nation that attempted to write freedom down in permanent ink, only to spend centuries agonizing over what that ink actually meant.
The preface is essential because it sets the philosophical boundaries of the poem.
And we should probably add a necessary disclaimer here.
Oh, certainly. Whether you, as a listener, fully agree with the poet's specific historical critique of American industrialization or not, it is utterly fascinating to see how the author uses this format to force the reader to look at their own country through a dramatically different lens.
Right. We're not necessarily endorsing the poet's political economy, but rather exploring the immense mythological framework they are building.
Exactly. The poet observes the American experiment with a mixture of immense admiration and profound dread.
They note that democracy is a dreadful thing, like a dragon or a deity, glorious to behold, but perilous to command.
And the verses themselves are constructed with a deliberate rhythmic cadence that revives the heroic verse tradition.
Let's talk about that rhythm, because it does tremendous work. Listen to the imagery used to describe the industrialization and the spiritual shift of the nation.
It's very vivid.
The poet writes of early cities rising, with steeples stabbing through the cloud, an image of aggressive, reaching faith.
The physical architecture points upward, suggesting a society oriented toward the transcendent.
But then the landscape shifts. As the steeples are overshadowed, the poet writes of new Babels tall and thin, as men begin to forge their gods in iron and speed.
The physical architecture reflects the internal spiritual architecture.
We move from a people who carved their cross in the forest, who believe that man shall rule no man as slave, to a people who worship the engines of their own creation.
People who name their ambition freedom, while slowly forgetting the moral framework that made freedom possible in the first place.
It is a poem about spiritual warfare on a continental scale.
And what the poet is mourning here is the loss of the sacramental imagination.
I want to stop you right there, because sacramental imagination is one of those beautiful literary terms that can easily fly over our heads.
Sure.
What does that mean in the context of this epic?
Well, the sacramental imagination is the theological and literary ability to see the invisible world operating in and through visible, tangible things.
It is the belief that matter matters.
Exactly. It's seeing water not just as H2O, but as a vehicle for purification.
It's seeing bread not just as carbohydrates, but as a vehicle for communion.
Right. When a culture has a sacramental imagination, its architecture, its art, and its laws are built to reflect a higher divine order.
And when it loses that imagination,
a tree is just timber, a river is just a power source, and a human being is just a unit of economic production. The poet is arguing that America lost its sacramental imagination to the religion of iron and speed.
But I have to challenge the poem at this point, or at least play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay, go ahead.
Framing the modern market and industrialization purely as a babble of iron and speed feels a bit like a luxury critique, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, that same iron and speed built the hospitals, distributed the penicillin, electrified the rural Midwest, and brought millions out of crushing agrarian poverty.
That's true.
How do we reconcile this poem's harsh critique without just sounding like grumpy Luddites who want everyone to go back to churning their own butter by candlelight?
That is the exact tension the poem wrestles with, and it's a vital pushback. The author isn't actually arguing against the existence of hospitals, electricity, or commerce.
They aren't.
No, they are exploring a hierarchy of values. The problem isn't the iron or the speed. The problem is forging them into gods.
I see.
When efficiency and economic growth become the highest possible goods, eclipsing human dignity and spiritual health, the culture begins to devour itself.
The poem acknowledges the roar of wheel and mart, but it warns that Rome once ruled a world as wide and rotted first from inward pride.
The poet is saying that material prosperity without a moral and spiritual compass is merely a well-decorated shipwreck.
That makes a lot of sense. It is the idolatry of the tool rather than the use of it.
Precisely.
And this brings me to the form of the work itself. I am continually fascinated by the question of why epic poetry, this sweeping, heroic, chanted verse, disappeared from our modern culture.
It's a great question.
I think for a long time, we have treated poetry like a fragile academic artifact. We lock it behind the glass case of a university syllabus.
We examine its meter with tweezers.
Right. We dissect its syllables in graduate seminars, and we assume it is meant only for quiet, delicate contemplation by experts.
But this Chestertonian style of verse completely rejects that museum curator approach.
This kind of poetry is like a battered marching drum, or a weathered, mud-stained flag carried into battle.
It is meant to be used. It is meant to be chanted aloud, to be memorized by ordinary people, and to be lived.
So why did it die out?
Epic poetry died out because we lost a shared societal myth. Epic verse relies on an audience that believes they are part of a continuous grand narrative.
And when a culture fractures into aggressive hyper-individualism.
Exactly. When we stop believing that our history is part of a cosmic story, the epic form no longer makes sense.
We replaced epics with deeply introspective, fragmented modern poetry because that reflected the fragmented modern mind.
But reading the Ballad of the Great Republic, you can feel why modern audiences are suddenly hungering for this older form again.
We are starved for heroism that isn't instantly undercut by cynicism.
We want to believe that the struggles of our time, the battle against the crushing weight of the technocratic state, the fight to preserve human dignity are connected to internal truths.
We want to believe that the stars that look down on Washington look down still.
That hunger for heroism is palpable. But the danger, of course, is that such hunger can easily dissolve into mere nostalgia.
And nostalgia is a highly dangerous passive emotion.
It mourns a lost golden age that probably never existed, and it paralyzes us in the present.
We end up just wearing period clothing and complaining about the internet.
Ha! Exactly. What makes this poem so vital is that it is strictly anti-nostalgic. It is highly active.
It does not flinch from the sins, the compromises, and the immense peril of the American project.
It knows the history of the continent is soaked in blood and contradiction.
Yet it recovers beauty and courage by insisting that the original flame, the profound foundational belief that all men are accountable to a higher moral order, that rights come from a creator and not the state, can still be found and fanned back into a roaring fire.
The poet suggests that if America forgets God, God will not forget America.
The true republic, the poem argues, is built not upon safety, but upon sacrifice.
The recovery of heroism comes from the realization that every generation must fight the exact same spiritual battle against pride, amnesia, and the seduction of power.
It is a call to arms for the imagination. It's asking you, the listener, to see your own country, not as a settled, inevitable empire, but as a perilous, ongoing experiment that requires your constant spiritual vigilance.
It is the lyrics speak of the hills of Albion where saints and soldiers tried, and they anchor the concept of divine truth in the very dirt, declaring, "The truth is cut in chalk and clay, eternal as the land."
We have to talk about the physical reality of what that lyric is referencing because it's incredible.
Yes, the White Horse of Uffington.
Right. It's a prehistoric hill figure in England carved into the turf to reveal the white chalk bedrock underneath. It is roughly 3,000 years old.
And the only reason it still exists, the only reason it hasn't been swallowed completely by grass and weeds, is because for 3 millennia, the local people have continuously gone up the hill to physically scour it.
Generation after generation, peasants, lords, monks, and farmers have taken chalk and stone to clean the lines.
When the song says the truth is cut in chalk and clay, it is referencing this massive physical act of folk memory.
When you hear these words set to music, when you imagine them being sung not by a highly trained elite choir, but by a room full of ordinary people, farmers with dirt under their fingernails, mechanics, teachers, it evokes an incredibly powerful emotional response.
It feels like tapping into an ancient underground river of communal memory.
The emotional power of this kind of music cannot be overstated,
Right.
because it serves a critical social function that we have largely lost.
We are talking about the intersection of the pub song, the marching song, and the hymn.
These are forms of music that were never meant to be merely performed by a professional to a passive audience sitting in the dark.
They were meant to be participated in. They carry the historical memory and the shared burdens of a community.
What you see in the White Horse Hymn is a perfect distillation of that Catholic imagination of music we touched on earlier.
It is the profound theological idea that physical, earthy, heavy things, the chalk, the clay, the hills, the mud, the beer, the bread, are inherently sacramental.
They are not obstacles to the divine. They are the very vehicles through which eternal truths are communicated and preserved.
The white horse cut into the Berkshire Hills is not a floating, ethereal spirit. It is a massive physical gouge in the earth.
The hymn captures that physical labor, that earthly rootedness, and elevates it to an act of worship.
I am continually struck by the stark contrast between a piece of music like this and what currently dominates our airwaves.
I have to ask, why does so much of our modern music utterly lack this sense of grandeur and transcendence?
I know we sound like old men yelling at a cloud when we critique modern pop music, but there is a mechanical difference here.
If you look at the landscape of algorithmic, commercially driven pop music, it feels entirely transient.
It is engineered by producers in soundproof rooms, using data points to create a song that will grab your attention for exactly 2 minutes and 10 seconds before the algorithm feeds you the next one.
And it functions exactly like a physiological response. It is engineered for a quick emotional spike, a rapid consumption that leaves you almost immediately hungry again.
Exactly. To use an analogy, it is like a quick sugar rush.
It gives you a burst of energy, it lights up the dopamine receptors in your brain, but it has no nutritional value. It offers no lasting substance.
But I think we have to play devil's advocate here, too. Couldn't you argue that algorithmic pop music serves a necessary function?
In what way?
Sometimes people just want a quick escape. When someone is grinding through a brutal 8-hour shift at a factory or sitting in soul-crushing traffic, maybe they don't want to contemplate the eternal truths cut into the chalk and clay.
Maybe they just want the sugar rush to get them through the next hour.
That is a completely fair point. There's nothing inherently evil about a sugar rush or a catchy pop song.
The problem arises when the sugar rush is the only thing left on the cultural menu.
Right. When a culture forgets how to bake bread, it starves.
And a piece of music like the White Horse Hymn, grounded in folk memory and sacramental reality, feels like heavy, dark, sustaining bread that has been baked for a very long journey.
It is meant to be carried in the pocket of your coat and chewed on when the road gets steep, when the winter storm hits, when the personal tragedy strikes.
It doesn't just entertain you, it fortifies you.
It connects you to the people who walk the road before you and to the eternal realities that govern the journey itself.
That is the essential difference. Modern music often reflects a culture that believes only in the present moment, a culture severed from its past and profoundly anxious about its future.
Therefore, its music must be immediate, disposable, and fiercely individualistic.
A hymn, however, is an act of defiance against the tyranny of the present.
When you sing that the truth is cut in chalk and clay, eternal as the land, you are aligning yourself with a reality that outlasts empires.
You are acknowledging that you are part of a continuous story, that you have a role to play in scouring the chalk for the next generation.
And this realization beautifully connects all of our sources this morning into a single, cohesive vision.
In the Gospel of John, we saw the blueprint for an ontological unity that transcends time and isolation.
In the Lost broadcasts, we saw the terrifying psychological and spiritual consequences of trying to bury the past and ignore the demands of conscience.
In the epic poetry of the Bright Republic, we saw the heroic, continental struggle to maintain a nation's soul against the seductions of power and the amnesia of the market.
And finally, in the hymn, we find the practical, earthy, sustaining song that gives us the strength to carry on that struggle in our ordinary daily lives.
And as we have been talking, the morning has finally broken fully over Atchison.
The deep bruised purple has given way to a pale, clear gray, and the streetlights along the brick roads are beginning to flicker off one by one.
The fog is lifting off the Missouri River, revealing the muddy, powerful current beneath. The town is fully awake now.
You can hear the low, steady hum of traffic as people head out into their day.
They are driving to the factories on the edge of town, walking with backpacks to the classrooms on the college hill, turning the locks and opening the doors to the shops on Commercial Street.
And heading out to the farms where the heavy work of spring planting waits.
The great complicated machinery of ordinary life is in motion.
And the challenge, the absolute necessity for all of us, is to carry the things we have spoken of this morning, the ancient beauty, the spiritual communion, the demand of conscience, and the sacramental weight of the earth out into that ordinary waking world.
We cannot leave these truths in the archive. We cannot leave them safely contained in the quiet hours of the dawn.
They must be carried into the noise, the fluorescent lights, and the labor of the day.
Precisely. The knowledge we glean from these deep dives into the sources is never meant to be hoarded as mere intellectual curiosity or aesthetic pleasure.
It is meant to equip us for the beautiful, incredibly difficult work of living well in a world that constantly tries to distract us.
And if you have found some fortification in this hour, some bread for the journey, we warmly invite you to continue the conversation with us.
You can read the continuing stories, essays, and reflections from Chesterton Radio on our Substack.
You can listen to the Open Door live stream, which provides a continuing companionable signal through the night on Rumble at live.chestertonradio.com.
And you can visit the Chesterton Radio Library channel and Chesterton Radio Originals on YouTube to explore these works, these stories, and this music in their entirety.
We want to leave you this morning with one final lingering thought to mull over as you grab your coat, step out your door, and into whatever this Thursday holds for you.
We have seen how, in the brazen, lonely town of Blackwood, the static of the radio hid the unresolved griefs and the quiet, desperate truths of the people.
Truths they had tried to bury, but which demanded to be heard.
And we have seen how, in the ancient hills of the Ballad of the White Horse, internal truths were not self-sustaining.
Right, they required constant, active, physical scouring by human hands to remain visible against the creeping weeds.
So, as you go about your work today, consider this. What neglected truths, what quiet, vital signals in your own life are waiting to be heard right now beneath the buzzing static of your daily routine?
And what patches of eternal chalk in your own soul require your hands today to clear away the weeds of distraction and cynicism so that the shape of the truth might be seen once more?
Thank you for sitting with us in the dark.
May your day be blessed, and may your work be fruitful.